I think I might. I imagine you might like to talk. So there are two people. If people like to put their hands up, what I'll do is I'll try and take sort of two questions at a time. One in the middle, and one over there, and then if you could go, and then that gentleman there.
Rory McLeod, I find it surprising that none of you in your discussions have looked at the audience. Surely the new battle and the new fault lines is demographics. The average Brit is aged 40. Surely the battle now will be between the old, with their index-linked pensions, who are invulnerable to this and who did not exist in the 1930s because they were dead, and the people in the public sector, with their final salary schemes, however eroded. The middle-aged people who are paying the taxes and will not enjoy the benefits which are unsustainable, and the young who cannot expect jobs. Let me give you one statistic and one quotation, which is that the British national debt is now approaching levels previously achieved only at the ends of major wars. It is far, far higher now than it was in the 1930s. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
And we'll take the gentleman over there. Yeah. Can somebody get there?
Thank you. You mentioned, Will Hutton, that you recognise nationalism as a threat, and I think I would agree with you. But nationalism is something that we can recognise, that we've seen it operating in the past. In the 1930s, the early 30s, I don't think people really recognised fascism, and particularly Nazism in Germany, as a serious threat. Mussolini was in power already, but Hitler was on the lunatic fringe. And I wonder, what is there on the lunatic fringe that we're not taking seriously at the moment?
It's a good question. It's a good question. And there was one more over there. And then I'll do another one.
Yes, John Strafford. A couple of weeks ago at the Orwell Prize meeting at Canary Wharf, the platform had a consensus that the real unemployment was going to go up to about 8 million. That kind of strain that will create in the population with people taking to the streets would be horrendous. But at the same time, we've seen our liberties destroyed by this government. When a man can be arrested at a Labour Party conference for shouting nonsense under anti-terrorism legislation, when somebody can be arrested outside the Senate House in the Whitehall for reading the lists of people who've been killed. And I have to say, this week, I was shocked last night on Any Questions when the panel were asked about kettling in the demonstrations in the City of London, whereby the police corral people into small groups and then hold them for 4 or 5 hours. And when that can be done, when those people haven't been charged, when they haven't, if they haven't got a mask on, if they haven't got weapons on them, and they're not allowed to go about their lawful business, something has gone drastically wrong in this country. And it's time that we had a constitutional convention at which we can rid this rotten political system we've got and once again give power back to the people.
Well, the age, I mean, you all look far too youthful to be approaching pensionable age. But I mean, in the sense that it wasn't a phenomenon in Britain in the 1930s, but of course the impact of fixed incomes and the division between generations was something that destroyed the Weimar Republic. I mean, it wasn't so much the deflation of the Great Depression that hit the centre of German politics, which those people inhabited, but it was the hyperinflation of the early 1920s, and the liberal centre parties were never able to drag them back. So you're absolutely right that generational division was very pronounced, and of course Will's right to say that Europe's depression wasn't as severe as that of the United States after 1929, but Europe had been in a very deep recession, almost all, and in crisis, Central and Eastern Europe, certainly for almost all of the 1920s. So it was mired in deep economic and political difficulty, and it produced an awful, I mean, your point about liberties, lots of liberties went a long way before 1929. The levels of political violence were extraordinary and really quite terrifying. I can't really comment on the current lunatic fringe, but you're right that fascism and National Socialism were seen as a way of providing order, and I thought that was what struck me so much about Hilda's The Security of the Workhouse, that you were prepared to put up with more poverty and infringement on your liberty just to have that sense of security and that sort of moving inward. And that can happen in all sorts of ways. And of course we don't just feel insecure because our pensions might be worth nothing or our savings are not bringing anything, and we can't see how we're going to hold our jobs or find jobs for our children, but also that there are much larger international problems which on a local level we simply can't solve, and it's difficult to see how we're going to develop, or we so far haven't really found mechanisms that work to integrate the climate problem with the economic challenges that we face.